gives me great pleasure to welcome you here this morning to briefly share some ideas with you about the way forward for your son. Sibs and Gamani, our Deputy Rector Pastoral, and Brendan Gittins, our Deputy Rector Pupils, will also be addressing you on the leadership program for your boys. And then Jerry Knoll, our Senior Academic, will tell you about the process that Tim Jarvis, our counsellor, and the other LO staff have taken the boys through to this point in terms of career guidance and what lies ahead for them. But before he does this, I'd like to share some ideas of a more general nature. I want to thank you all for being here this morning. Your presence endorses the importance of this process. Your presence is part of your ongoing support for your son. It is vital that he has a sounding board against which he can test his ideas, hopes, and dreams, and you will fill a vital role in this regard. Your son is nearly 70% through his time here at Michaelhouse. Can you believe it? You probably remember sitting here for the E-Block Open Day 3.5 years ago. I bet it has really flown by, and I want to assure you that the next 21 months will too. Your sons have more choices upon them in terms of their tertiary studies and future careers than any group that has preceded them. They are confronted by a myriad of choice, and this is further complicated by the fact that the choices themselves are changing and growing in number. The world is changing so rapidly that your sons may well end up in a career that does not even exist today. They are also changing and may well feel very differently in 5 or 10 years' time about how they want to spend the rest of their lives. Each one of your boys has significant potential and have many avenues open to them. The secret is for them to choose that direction which will leverage their talents and their strengths. It is unlikely that your sons know exactly where they want to end up, but if they can at least have some idea of where they want to get to, then it will help inform their next steps. It is important that your son starts to understand the entry requirements for the course he's thinking of pursuing, so that he can work towards achieving them. The B-Block year is an incredibly important year, and the end-of-year exams are arguably more important than even the final exams in matric. The process of working towards the B-Block end-of-year exams has already started, and of course the June exams will also play a really important role in this process. It may well be that your son can gain provisional access to his course of choice based on his B-Block results, and this will take a lot of pressure off him next year. To illustrate the unique nature of every case, I want to give you an example of a fairly recent matric boy. He wanted to study a visual arts degree at Stellenbosch. He's a talented artist. He was very distressed to learn early on in his matric year that he had not met the entrance requirements for provisional acceptance. He needed an average of 60% across his 6 subjects, excluding LO. He achieved an average of 58%. This included a core maths mark in the mid-40s. The fact of the matter is that the visual arts degree does not require core maths at all, and he would have been much better off changing to maths literacy. I can guarantee that he would have achieved the extra 12% he needed to get his average over 6 subjects up by 2%. I'm not necessarily advocating the change to maths literacy. I know that it does close some doors. What I am advocating is that your sons, with your help, do some homework about the requirements. It is too important to leave it to chance. As parents, you need to interrogate things carefully. As parents of 2 daughters, we greatly appreciated things being put in place by our daughter's school, but we certainly complemented this with our own research, and I implore you to do so too. It may sound like I'm trying to cover ourselves, but the reality is that we all want the best for the boys, and the last thing we want is to get to this time next year and have regrets. Parents, please don't put pressure on your sons in terms of his career choice. Rather support him in his choice. As some of you know, my husband is also a teacher here at Michaelhouse. He teaches maths. And I'd like to tell you just a little story about our two daughters when it came to choosing what they wanted to do at university. So our eldest daughter, by the time she got to the end of grade 11, she had no idea what she wanted to do at all. So she was fairly useful at maths, and coming from a family of two teachers, I said to her, well, why don't you go do a BCom degree with maths and then study teaching? She looked at me in the eye and she said, Mum, teaching is the very last thing I want to do. Anyway, she is not a teacher. This was a good few years ago. She actually chose to go to the University of Pretoria. She was very keen on getting into the fashion side. She spent 2 weeks at Pretoria University going that route and then decided absolutely not, that wasn't for her. And so after 2 weeks, she changed to do a BCom in marketing. She ended up doing her honours in marketing and is now, has been working and living in London for the last 5 years and is in digital marketing. So she changed her mind, but one thing she was very sure of was that she didn't want to be a teacher. The second daughter, well, you always have one of your kids that's much easier than the other. Generally, she knew exactly what she wanted to do, went to university, studied it. She did a master's in economics and is now an economics consultant. So that was all very simple and very much less stressful for my husband and I. But perhaps that story you sort of perhaps it resonates with you. But let your son choose and make him take ownership. He must be involved in the process. He must fill in the forms for university. You filling them in for him is well-meaning but misguided, as there's education in him filling them in. This is a great school. If your son has applied himself and taken advantage of all that is on offer here, then he will certainly go out there with a head start. However, there are no guarantees, and it would be misguided to feel that he's entitled to preferential treatment merely because he has attended Michaelhouse. A few years back, one parent begged for assistance in trying to plead his son's case with Wits, despite the fact that he had not satisfied the criteria. The parents said, wouldn't it be crazy if a Michaelhouse boy couldn't get into any university at all? So perhaps just something to think about there. The hard work has already started for your sons in terms of building up, so choosing a university, choosing a course, and working towards it. The purpose of today is for you to touch base with your son's teachers to find out how they are progressing academically. We have a team of fantastic teachers who really care about your boys and who want to see them do the best they can. Please feel free to also contact me or Jerry if you have any concerns about your son's progress. I'm now going to hand over to Sibs and Kamani and then Brendan Gittins. They'll then be followed by Jerry Knoll. Sibs, Brendan and I are presenting to the Michaelhouse board this morning in about half an hour's time. So please excuse us. We will be leaving once Brendan and Sibs have finished their presentation to you. Just a notice from Chris Mayer, our chaplain. He wanted me to mention that there will be a prayer meeting in the crypt from 1:45 this afternoon till about 2:15. So please feel free to pop in at any stage during that time. I hope you have a really good rest of the day, and also to those whose sons are being confirmed, I'll see you a bit later in the chapel as well. I hope you have a really special day. Thanks very much.
Good morning all. Sorry, I disappeared. Just to introduce myself again, I know Mwin has already mentioned. My name is Busiso Namani. I'm known as Sips around here. In fact, it's the only place where I'm called that. I've had interesting situations where I would work with my friends, and let's say in a mall somewhere or in Joburg somewhere, and someone will come up to me and says, "Hi, Sips," and my friends will look at me very funny and say, "Is that what they call you?" So if you can get yourself to call me Spusiso, I'll be happy. Sips is also fine. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon and myself are responsible for primarily the well-being of the boys, pastoral care. We work with each other, we spend a lot of time together. We pretty much do what Ross Elliott many years ago called it, when he found me many years ago and said, "Sips, all you got to do in this job, make sure that you just put the electric fences. You know, in between electric fences, there are no rules. The moment they touch electric fence, they will know what they've done wrong. You know, and I think we are well on our way in doing that. The last 3 years, from a discipline and just putting firm boundaries, I believe that we've done quite a good job for the boys, and now every single boy in Michaelhouse should be very clear about where their boundaries are as far as discipline is concerned. Really, my job this morning is just to give you a brief outline of what the leadership looks like for this year, and then Brandon will pick up on a few traditions and matters around discipline. You know, talking about tradition, I'll be very keen to see what these boys say, what they hold close to their hearts with regards to the traditions. Because you remember their entrance into Michaelhouse was quite interesting in many ways. They are in fact the real COVID kids at Michaelhouse. I was the housemaster of East when you guys came into school with your sons. I can remember having an online meeting as my first meeting with all my boys in East, the Bakers, Von Klemperers, Grouts. It was interesting times because we were trying to figure things out. It was awkward in many ways as well, trying to have a house meeting online. So that's where you guys come from. We understand that. So we'll be very interested to see what boys will call traditions, because they didn't really get the so-called tradition, the traditional entrance into Michaelhouse. So we've been working hard in trying to make them understand that the world has evolved, it is evolving, they need to adjust accordingly. But Brendan will touch base into that. I just want to say from the beginning, from the word go, that the leadership program that we've kind of put into place in the last few years, the end goal is not to produce prefects. That is not what we are aiming to do. The end goal is, by the end of the year, we want to hand over better kids whose leadership and understanding of leadership is in a far better place than they did at the beginning of this year, or at least in the last few years. So really, we're not driven. End goal is not driven by making them prefects. Those soft skills, which a lot of them are inherent, will be enhanced along the way. And normally, the boys who've got better soft skills and leadership skills will then be made into prefects. I will talk a little bit more about that later on. But just a brief outline as to what we'll be doing. Each term, we have assigned certain part of the program is assigned certain objectives that we'd like to achieve. And your sons are assigned into a portfolio. Each one of your boys will have a portfolio they're assigned to. And through an MIC of each portfolio, they are responsible for organizing whatever. So, for example, I'm responsible for 3 of those portfolios. I've got the school council along with Brandon. I also have the kitchen committee. I run the social awareness. So all those boys who are in those portfolios, running those portfolios, meet with me from time to time, and they then are responsible for organizing whatever I've tasked them to organize. They run with that, and they go back into their houses and give feedback. So it's just to give them a platform to start being able to stand up and organize a few activities and events for their respective houses. There are many other examples of portfolio that these boys are in charge of. So just talk to your son and ask him what portfolio is he responsible for. Okay. What do we do? What we normally do term by term is to invite a couple of people and to address the boys in term 2, the whole focus, again, is going to be around the notion of understanding this COPCAC system. We do invite a lot of old boys to come and talk to the boys. And really what we do find is that the old boys, they try and compare what their time was like when they were here versus how the world turned out after they left Michaelhouse. And it is really just to position our boys accordingly and to try and make them to be as current as possible, instead of thinking that we must be stuck into 10, 30 or so years ago. So that's what we do. At the end of each quarter, by the way, you should receive a report about the progress of your son around the matters of leadership. Your house-masters will ultimately be responsible for producing those reports. Then on term 3, really the program we look at, I must say, we are also we're trying to move the boys away from a very rigid hierarchy type of leadership into a more inclusive type of hierarchy. And we are beginning to talk a lot about a healthy hierarchy. Michaelhouse is a very rigid school when it comes to hierarchy. A blockers are everything here, so according to the little boys. So what we're trying to teach our B blockers is that by the time they get into A block, they've got to understand that they've got to work hard on their soft skills, because not everything revolves about what they think. It is important that their influence kind of infiltrates through the rest of the school. So we work hard on things like that. So what will then happen is that each house will develop their own blueprint during the 3rd quarter as to how they want to run the house the following year. The reason why we do that is because we want all the boys to take part in the development of that blueprint, so that every single boy the following year, when they're in matric, they take ownership of that. It takes away this whole notion of us and them. By us and them, I mean, once you have the prefects in place and the non-prefects kind of just think they're not important. So we're moving the non-prefects into a space where we want them to be important. We want them to acknowledge that they are allowed to call out boys who are not behaving well around the school, because the prefects are unable to be everywhere. So the rest of the prefects, the rest of the matrics are responsible for upholding the standards, the discipline across the school. The most important part is how they handle that. They may not take matters into their own hands, and boys are struggling with that. So that's a section or a part where we need to work hard with our non-matrics, because they want to handle discipline, and more often than not, because they're not as well trained compared to the school prefects and the house prefects, they tend to do things that are on the other side of the fence, basically. Right, and then by end of the 4th term, then beginning of the 4th term, we'll then begin to have our new prefects in place following for the following year. All right. So just to re-emphasize again, guys, I think the program that we put into place, it really talks about making our boys better people by the end of the year. So we're not really ingrained in producing prefects. So in the leadership, my philosophy is very simple. All these boys, it's like a horse race. All the horses are in a race. Some just get out just a nose or slightly ahead of the rest. It doesn't mean that the horse that is at the back is not in a race of leadership. It just means that maybe that particular boy will get his opportunities later on in life. And in fact, I always say, if you do want to pick, don't pick in high school. So that's from me, guys. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I think just Sibs has said quite a lot around some of the stuff I wanted to just emphasize, but I think the aim for me is just to prepare you for some conversations you're probably going to have with your sons over the next little while. You probably have already had with them as well. The boys, and a lot of them, not all of them, are going to tell you that many traditions are being taken away from us, and many privileges are being taken away from us. And when you listen to them, they sound quite convincing. And we, Sibs and I, and the house and many other sort of stakeholders give the boys opportunities to talk, and we talk through these things. And I just really want you to try examine what it is that they say has been taken from them. And what traditions is it that they feel should stay? Because you'll probably find that the stuff that they're talking about really is completely unacceptable from modern day school, completely unacceptable for a school that I think should rank itself as the best in South Africa, if not the world. And we need to, as a team, examine these things that the boys talk about. So from my side, just to explain what we've said to the boys is, we will continue to enhance traditions and rites of passage that we think will build character and will make good people ready for the modern world. But we'll be extremely, extremely firm on anything that they call traditions that will dehumanize people, will prey on the weak, and this notion of having to break people down. We are really firm about that. There is nowhere to go. Sib spoke about the electric fence. Going against people's human rights, dehumanizing, breaking people down is completely on the other side of the fence. So we need to concentrate on the things that make Michaelhouse special. The ethos, the manners, respect for each other, understanding family dynamics. Sib's mentioned a healthy hierarchy. Hierarchy is not all bad. It's important. It's important that the little guys come in and they understand the bigger picture. It's important that they can look up at the bigger guys and go, that is the type of person I want to be. So we respect that and we value that. What we won't stand for is any sort of abuse of power. We won't stand for boys engaging in activities where the aim is to harm each other or harm the good nature of our school. So discuss with them, interrogate, what is it that they're worried about? Is it waking boys up at 1 o'clock in the morning and making them do activities that could land a boy up in jail? And I'm sorry to be blunt with you, but some of these things do cross some serious, serious violations. Interestingly, when we talk to old boys, especially those sort of in the last sort of 10 years and back, a lot of them will say that is absolutely not a tradition. So we could do something this year, within 3 years the boys will tell you it's been happening for 150 years. So we've got to examine these things. Ask them why. If it doesn't benefit the school, and more importantly, if it doesn't benefit them as matrix, as human beings in their development, there's no place for it. So please engage in those conversations. We talk to them a lot about these things, and it really is impressive how a lot of them question and come around to going, well, what is the right way? What is the best way? And what I keep saying to them is, what would the leaders of the best school in the world do? Right? And I don't think waking people up at 2 o'clock in the morning repeatedly is what they would do. And that's just a PC example I can give you today. We want thoughtful leaders, as Sib said. We want leaders who know the difference between being firm and destroying spirit. We want leaders who understand when is the right time to build people up. We want young men who can recognize when someone is struggling. We want young men who are going to go into the world and be excellent husbands, fathers, and being Michaelhouse, we hope, leaders of industry. Because a lot of the boys think that to be a leader who is feared, aggressive, is the way to go. And I think we can all agree that in the big world, that doesn't work. It really doesn't work. So the boys are struggling to understand at times, what does it mean to be firm on expectations? So Sibs and I and the housemaster in the school are working really hard to give them tools other than just a hammer, just to shout, just to scare. And I think some of the guys are still trying to figure out, what is that tool? How can I be firm on the boys around me while being empathetic, kind? And I think we can all think of the leaders in our lives. They're the type of people who inspired us. They haven't necessarily scared us. So that's the journey we're on. I think we're making great strides. But I warn you as parents, the boys are going to come home and say, they're taking away our traditions. And I really want you to examine that and have that discussion with them. And I think with your assistance in that regard, asking them to introspect, coming back to school, using the various platforms that SIBS has created for them to have those discussions is really, really important. The other end of it is they've been warned. They know where the electric fence is, it's very clear. So obviously we want them to do the right thing because it is the right thing, but we also have warned them that if you do the wrong thing and you're caught, you're going to get yourself into trouble. And if you do receive a phone call from me at any stage, it probably means that your son is in a little bit of trouble. In closing, from my side, sorry if that was a bit hard-hitting, but we do need your support. In closing, from my side, the way we're trying to run our discipline system at the moment is we're really concentrating on the small things, on the little things that build up. You may get a call from your housemaster at some stage. You may get a message from a tutor going, I'm a bit worried about this and this and this. Please take it seriously. It's at that stage where we can have the biggest impact. If a boy gets to a stage where he's behaving poorly and it's starting to increase to a level where it's happening on weekends when he's away, and it's happening at bigger and bigger and bigger mistakes. And as Sib says, they find themselves on the other side of that electric fence. It's sometimes too late for us and you to intervene. So please help us. We spot the trend, we try and get the guys to correct quickly. We always say, boys make mistakes, and they're going to make mistakes. In fact, they're going to make a lot of them. Let's keep them in the area where mistakes are in such a way that you can recover from them. And that's a concerted effort from you, from us, from their teachers, and from everyone involved. But I wish you a wonderful day, and sorry if that was a bit hard-hitting. If anyone wants to chat to me about what I've said, I'm available. I'm not a B block teacher, so I'll be in my office. But I'm calling upon your support as you engage with these important conversations with your boys. If they tell you that the matrics are losing privileges, I can tell you that our matrics live a very, very good life here at Michaelhouse. I'm not sure they need more privileges at this stage. But thank you very much. Mr. Noel, thank you guys. Have a good day.
Good morning, B Block parents. As you know already from my introduction by Win, my name is Jerry Noel and I'm the senior academic at Michaelhouse. The talk I'm going to give today is normally covered by our Senior Master of Pastoral, Mr. Tim Jarvis, who you probably know by now as our school counsellor. He is the one who has a wealth of knowledge around this topic of college and university applications. Unfortunately, Mr. Jarvis cannot be with us here today as he's away presenting at the IBC, the International's Boys School Coalition at Hilton. And so as you can see, I indeed did lose a serious game of rock, paper, scissors. The disclaimer is therefore the standard. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the author and do not necessarily reflect my own. And so whatever I say or do, especially if it's controversial and emotional to you, you're more than welcome to take it up with Tim. Of course, that's a lie. Tim and I, as well as the entire Michaelhouse organization, are 100% aligned when it comes to this message that I'm about to share. But if there is any one take-home from today's presentation, please let it be this. I don't know if Win gave you that idea when she was addressing you about how important this year is, because I might be erring on the other side. Furthering your studies at university is about education and not training, and there's a difference. A good way of explaining this difference is perhaps to consider the holistic education that your sons receive here at Michaelhouse. Their horizons, paradigms, worldviews are expanded by a plethora of different courses, experiences and activities within the academic timetable, which is further expanded by our extracurricular programs, culture, sports, clubs and societies. There is a time, however, usually towards the end of B block year, that most teachers and subjects will stop educating, in the way that I'm using the term here, and begin training your sons for the end year IB matric exam. Another way of explaining this, and hence the reason for the picture of the National Art Gallery in Trafalgar Square, Westminster, is that you might be surprised to know that new soldiers who are trained through the Royal Military Academy, or Sandhurst, as it's most commonly referred to, will be taken to this very art gallery to learn about history, art, culture, and the general context of society and the world around them. Of course, they'll also go on to train to become soldiers as well. But Sandhurst and the soldiers themselves find greater value and significance in being educated as well as being trained. And so the purpose of university is to get educated. Training will follow on from this, but for most of us, this usually only starts to happen at our first job. It's no wonder, then, for example, that the Law Society of South Africa is encouraging prospective law students to rather do a BA or BCom first, instead of going straight into the LLB degree. This is an attempt to broaden the worldviews and paradigms of those who want to do law, who can then afterwards go train in the skills of being a lawyer. Another interesting piece of evidence from UCT is that only 50% of those who study engineering will end up doing a job in engineering. The other half will go on to business, the creative industry, science and technology. This further emphasizes how degrees in universities are about education and not training. And I think rightly so. Professor Jonathan Jansen sums this idea perfectly in this quote. You see, if education is about finding jobs as well as a sense of purpose, then what this great critical thinker and activist George Monbiot goes on to say is also true. Interestingly, George Monbiot says that in the future, if you want a job, you must be unlike a machine as possible. Creative, critical, and socially skilled. You've most likely all heard ad nauseum about the skills and competencies of the future, the 21st century, or the World Economic Forum's outlook on the future of jobs and how the jobs of tomorrow have not yet been invented. What jobs are looking for nowadays are students who, through their education, have developed these harder, softer skills. Excuse the irony. These top 10 skills of 2025 have been taken from the recent WEF World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs report. I have just annotated brief notes on this, demonstrating the multitude of experiences that a Michaelhouse education has to offer in honing these skills and competencies for our boys. So what we are seeing is most certainly a paradigm shift from the noble deal type jobs, so to speak, to the STEAM jobs. Furthermore, our boys, and we as society in some ways, are too quick to disregard a degree as valuable as a BA, for example. Again, sticking with Professor Jonathan Jansen, a BA is not only a valuable degree in itself, but it is also an incredible foothold in exploring and getting into a variety of other avenues, degrees and professions. Ultimately, the best advice that we can give our boys is to do something that they enjoy. At this point, I hope you don't mind me also indulging you with a bit of a personal story I know Wynne did about her daughters. And this story is about my brother, who's in fact pictured in here in the slide, testing VR and AI technology to remotely instruct and train a medical robot to do surgery on a patient who has pancreatic cancer in Ecuador. You have probably heard that saying that is most often misattributed to Albert Einstein. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Well, if that was a title to the film, if there was ever a title to the film of my brother's life, that would be it. In our family growing up, relatively speaking, I was the academic one, and my older brother was the sporty one. I was also the better looking one, of course. But that's not the point here. My brother grew up being told explicitly and implicitly by friends, family, teachers that he wasn't smart. He made it into Maritzburg College based on his sporting prowess and did well, playing first team rugby from grade 10, kicking out Butch James in his matric year, and setting most athletics records. This was the 90s. If he was at school now, he would have received every academic concession that there was probably to get. He barely passed matric, but Stellenbosch took him in to do what we jokingly referred to as his BA rugby. He failed every course, and he was enrolled in for 2 years. My father went down to plead with the university not to kick him out, to speak to the dean, and my brother couldn't even direct him to the whereabouts of the BA faculty. He was given grace once again because he was a valuable rugby player, playing for Western Province under 21 setup at the time. This was his life until a catastrophic back injury that almost saw him become a paraplegic. There was nothing more for my brother to do but finish his BA, which he did. He then went on to do a BA honours degree at the Sports Science Institute at UCT, where he was told implicitly and explicitly how smart he was. Through this avenue, he went on to complete his MBCHB at UCT, became a professor of surgery, and arguably one of the most qualified and highly skilled hepatopancreaticobiliary surgeons in the country, as well as being internationally acclaimed. At least I still have the looks. I was fortunate enough in October last year to have travelled and toured top US universities and technical colleges with a group of 17 students who came from government schools from around South Africa. We visited and spoke to the admissions departments of Harvard, MIT, Columbia University, Yale, Princeton. It might be interesting to hear a few of the key takeaways from this tour. It's true what they say. To get into these universities, they are not merely looking at academic performance, scores on MBTs, SATs, ACTs, or whether you did an IAB or Cambridge exit exam. They are looking for a story. What other activities and skills or value add-on can you offer over and above those getting good scores at tests? Traveling with young people from under-resourced environments from around our country, I was blown away by how talented, creative and smart some of these students were. And so it's important to remember that our boys are not more or less gifted than other students from around the country, or around the world for that matter. But one thing is for certain, at Michaelhouse, they are hell of fortunate in the space and opportunities that they have to learn and experience. What we've spoken a lot already today is essentially the value of what the US calls liberal art universities. The purpose of these universities being to learn a great deal about something, but also something about a great deal. And finally, there are hundreds of excellent universities and colleges that aren't necessarily deemed as Ivy League, a term in itself derived merely from an athletic competition between 8 universities. This slide here shows the top-ranked universities in the world and highlights those that Michaelhouse boys have been accepted to study over the past 10 years. The ones in red are those in the US, the ones in blue, the ones in the UK, and our South African ones in green, and Canada. Having spent some time highlighting these overseas universities, one mustn't forget that locally in South Africa we still have excellent universities, excellent faculties and departments that have a lot to offer, especially at a cheaper price. Lord only knows some of you need some relief after 5 years at Michaelhouse. And so finally, onto the nitty-gritty, and that is the timeline for your son's application process. If I could once again remind you of how we started today, and that is to stay calm. The only thing that your boys can do this year is to make sure that they try their best in the upcoming November exams. Everything else will happen in time, next year in A block. Please don't think that starting earlier is necessarily better either. Application forms for admissions to the following year are only published after the application process opens, and so you don't want to be applying on an outdated form, which has happened. We'd also like you to know that at Michaelhouse we extensively cover career education and provide support in various ways for your boys. From our life orientation programs, the World of Work Day. We have Bryce Decker coming to do career assessments. There's multiple university visits and application workshops. In fact, if you look more broadly, there is a longitudinal program that runs right from E Block through to A Block that each of your boys have been involved in. And so just to conclude, and this video sums up today's presentations, and as I said, if you've got any questions, please speak to Tim Jarvis. Life's too short, so let them enjoy their ride. It's a bit grim, all right, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.